Good afternoon, everybody. It's your boy Leroy McKenzie Jr. It is Championship Sunday. That's why y'all see me with the jersey on. That's why y'all see.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
boo,
right. I know my.
boo.
Hey, if a former president can say that he was cheated in the election, I can say that my team is going to be in the game today. I don't care what y'all say. Well, the grind don't stop. It is Sunday, but we're coming to you with another edition of the author showcase brought to you by the National Black Community News newspaper, which is bringing you some of the nations and international authors that are just full of great writing, great messages, great movements, great motivation. We had a brother, Dr. Shig, on yesterday. You all can check out his interview, the motivator, the encouragement. We've had children's book author Joy Ford on, just a number of just some awesome authors that have been a part of this anniversary showcase, is what I call it, because it was a year ago, in the beginning of January 2020, was when we did the first issue of the author showcase in the National Black Unity News newspaper. So we're celebrating all month, and thanking all of those who have been a part of the showcase, and then those who are a part of the showcase going into 2021. So we want to thank everybody for joining us. We want to thank everybody for supporting the National Black Unity News and supporting the Author Showcase, because we don't take it for granted that you all are listening to the interviews, but then also supporting the authors who have, just like I said, some phenomenal books. If you're an avid reader, if you're looking for some great books to read, I give you the author showcase that you can pick a genre and it is being represented here, and that was the purpose of it, giving these authors the platform that they would not ordinarily have as far as in mainstream media, in order to be able to talk about their mission, their message, their motivation, the movement that they are all a part of, and their books and other products that they have to offer as well too. So we're going to get into this showcase, and who I have with me. I have a good friend, but also just a phenomenal woman, a phenomenal author, phenomenal entrepreneur, and we're going to have conversations about all of that today. So I want to introduce everyone, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about who she is, and what she does. In just 1 second, and that is none other than Evangelist Nodella Jordan. I'm not even gonna mess with that middle name because I know how to pronounce it,
Knew
but
you was it. I knew you was it.
I was not gonna touch that because I was just like, nope, I'm not getting tongue tied with that. I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're gonna have to tell me about how you got that middle name or something. That
I
sounds like an interesting
will.
story. That sounds like an interesting story. But I want to welcome you to the Author Showcase. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday. I thank you for taking time out of your awfully busy schedule, because I know you are a busy lady and doing just some great things. So thank you for joining us on the Author Showcase today, to talk to us a little bit about your book and all the other great things that you have going on.
Okay. All right.
And what I'd like to do is I want to actually start off, if we can, by having you. What I usually do is by having the author introduce himself to everybody and just talk
Okay.
a little bit about who you are, and look a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into the conversation about the intimate place.
Okay. All right. So you want me to go?
Yep, absolutely,
Okay. All
absolutely.
right. Good afternoon, everyone. I believe it's afternoon now for everyone in all three time zones here in the US.
Right.
My name is Nodella Sacagawea Jordan. Um, you know, Leroy is just a phenomenal person. I call him my big brother, although I'm technically older than him, but he's still my big brother. I am originally from New Haven, Connecticut. I was actually born in the Bronx. I grew up in the city of New Haven of Connecticut, and a little over 6 years ago, God told me to retire from my job with the city of New Haven and relocate to Baltimore. And I was like, no way, no way, no way. And so that ended up being a year and a half long discussion, if you will. Needless to say, long story short, God won the conversation or the argument because my desire was to obey him. But prior to me leaving Connecticut, I worked for the city of New Haven. I had almost 18 years in. And with the city of New Haven, some of you may say, well, how in the world could you have retired? I actually retired at the age of 46. And again, when you're working for a local municipality, after a certain number of years of work, you can actually take what is technically and legally called an early retirement. And that's what I did. So I had almost 20 years in. And so I was certainly eligible to retire, and I did. And again, God told me he wanted me here in Baltimore. And so this is where I've been for the past little over 6 years. And I really come to love Baltimore as my new home, my second home, my home away from home. And I just love it here, and I'm enjoying what he's doing through me and with me while I'm here.
That is awesome, 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 awesome. Now, can you tell me, and we'll start off our conversation by going this way. What got you actually started in writing? What was it that have you always been a writer, or was that something that you kind of grew into?
Well, I've actually always been a writer. When I think back about when I was in school, more so in middle school, is when your teachers start giving you book reports to do.
Mm.
And so my teachers would say, give me a 1 page or 2 page book report. Well, I would turn in a 5 page book report. So I often had to redo the book report. My teacher was like, Nodella, I didn't ask for 5 pages. I asked for one or two. And so they would literally make me go back and do the book report to their
Mm.
specifications. I'm also a talker, but one thing about me being a talker, I'm not just a talker. When I talk, it's about relevant things. It's really conversation. I often leave people scratching their heads when we're done with the conversation. My goal when I do have a conversation with someone is to impart the knowledge and experience that I've gained through my life, to leave it with them in hopes of helping them somewhere along their life's journey. Um, and then after that, before I left Connecticut, it was actually uh, a, a little, almost a year before I actually left Connecticut. I was in the service, and a pastor called me out, and she began to minister to me. And she said to me, she said, sis, she said, I'm not, I was nervous about calling you out. And she said, I asked the Lord, are you sure? She was like, Holy Spirit, are you sure? And so as she began to speak, now, mind you, I had not spoken to anyone about anything, especially the writing. Inwardly, it was something that I wanted to do, but I figured once I retired, like in my 60s or 70s, it was something that I would do. But during this particular worship service, this particular pastor called me out, and she said, the Lord told me to tell you to write 2 books. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, okay, fine. I said, okay. Again, when I retire again, when I'm 60 or 70, I figured that was when I was going to write. So once I relocated here to Baltimore, and I had started working a job, and like 3.5 months in, I was laid off. And I was like, okay, what the world? I said, God, what in the world is going on? I said, where's my other job? I said, now you knew this was going to happen. I said, so where's my other job? I'm being honest. This is
Mm.
exactly how I was talking to him. I said, where's my other job? I said, you knew this was going to happen. Why didn't you prepare me? just as clearly as you and I are talking. He said, I told you to write 2 books. I said, I am, God. I said, when I'm about 60 or 70. Now, at the time, I was only 47. And he said, no, I mean now. I said,
Wow.
okay. And I'm like, all right. So after I finished pouting and crying for the night, I went to bed, got up the next morning, go into a time of devotion and meditation. And I said, okay, God, you want me to write this book? I said, so what am I writing about? I said, what is the name of this book going to be? And he told me plainly, the name of the book is called The Intimate Place, My God, My Man, Myself. And I said, okay. And so when I saw that God was not messing around, and the thing of it is that I was applying for job after job after job. Nobody wasn't even looking at my application, Leroy.
Wow.
God was not playing with me. And
Yeah.
so I said, okay, let's do this. And so how the intimate place even came about was because I was going to church services, not just my own home church services, but even when my former bishop would go out and minister. I'm seeing the people of God struggle to be intimate with this God they say they know. And I'm identifying him like that because I have to say it that way. They say that they know this God. They have a relationship with this God, but you struggle to be intimate with him. And so it was something I thought I was going to do in like maybe a workshop or seminar or something, but God never released me to talk about it until I got here because I didn't know he really wanted me to do a book about it instead of doing a seminar or a workshop or something like that. I thought I was going to teach or preach about it, but he wouldn't release me. And so that's kind of how the writing got started, is because it was prophesied to me that I would write 2 books, but not only that I would just write 2 books, but she said that they would be bestsellers. And I was like, oh, nice. Okay. And we know what bestseller means, ching, ching. And I said, okay. But still, my mindset was when I get older, because at 47, the fact that I was 47 at the time, and I'm figuring 60, well, that was still 13 years off. So I'm like, okay, that's still down the road a bit. So I just, I accepted it, but I was still in my own world. Like, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to do this job. I'm going to make me some money and live my life. But God had other plans.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because they say that the old adage is if you want to make God laugh, tell him what your plans are.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because we have this idea, and now that I'm 52, I got some years to look back on, and you think about what you thought about what your life was going to be, what
Yes.
the plans that you had and what you wanted to do in life and what you wanted to achieve like that. And I know
Yes.
for me, it's like it looks nothing like what I imagined it would
Yes.
look like. And you just like, okay, God, I understand that I don't
Yes.
control any of this, and it's all about what you want. It's all about
Yes.
your timing. It's all about when you say things should happen. When you say, like you were talking about, when you want us to do something, whether
Yes.
it's now or whether it's years later, those kind of things we can't begin to understand how and why he manifests things and how he works things out. So I think that's awesome that you talked about that, and just in the way that you grown, that you were thinking, hey, writing something, yeah, I'm going to do it, but it's going to happen, sometime down the road. But God, like you said, God had other plans for you in your writing.
Yes.
Now,
He
now,
did.
how many books have you written? Let's tell people how many books have you written thus far.
Currently, I've written 2 books. My second book is called Sassy, The Perfect Life.
Okay.
So these 2 books are definitely different books. So again, the intimate place was birthed out of the need to readdress intimacy. A lot of people, when they hear the word intimacy, when they hear the word intimate, your average person immediately think about sex or sexual relations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what my goal is through this book is to bring us back to a conscious state of having intimate relationships spiritually, mentally, emotionally, verbally, non-sexual, physically, and then obviously we know we pretty much got down the sexual part, but the other types of intimacy we tend not to be deliberate with, but yet we experience those more than the sexual intimacies, obviously, because God did not create our bodies to have sex all day long. And then how is anything going to get done if that's all we did all day long? And so in the intimate place, my God, my man, myself, and I often refer to it shortly as just the intimate place,
Mm-hmm.
is that we engage even in this live right now. We are having multiple types of intimacy, and it has nothing to do with sex. Our
Right.
first type of intimacy we're having is mental, because of the thoughts, the point of the conversation that we're having. So that's a mental intimacy. We're now also engaging in verbal intimacy. Now, we are both passionate people. Passion comes from our emotions. We are also having emotional intimacy, and none of it alludes to sexual relations.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I don't believe people really realize is that intimate, it shouldn't be a scary word. We should not be
Right.
afraid to say. One of the examples, or a couple of examples that I share about being intimate, as we was talking before coming live, we was talking about the end of the NFL season. We're
Mm-hmm.
going into the championship. We don't root for the same teams, but we both
Definitely not.
but we both have a passion for professional football.
Mm-hmm.
So during NFL season, this is my time of intimacy. Why? Because in the NFL, watching these teams play brings me emotional pleasure. And again, it has nothing sexual to do with it. It brings me emotional pleasure. And that's my time of intimacy. One of the other things I don't do often, but when I do it, is cooking. When
Mm-hmm.
I get into that zone for cooking,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in that zone and I'm having that intimate time. Why? Because I'm enjoying it. And so ultimately, intimacy, the definition in Latin is it's about having relationships, it's about friendship, it's about having close relations. Again, it doesn't say anything about sex.
Right. Right.
It just talks about a closeness of relationships between friends. But in the intimate place, there's three chapters. There's the my God chapter, there's the my man chapter. And for brothers, I just tell brothers, just swap it and say my woman chapter, and then you have the myself chapter. These are three critical relationships that govern our lives. But
Mm-hmm.
even with the myself chapter, we have the family and friend also that is attached to the myself chapter. And I basically just talk about, how we've gotten away from being conscious of having intimacy and not feeling some kind of way when somebody say, "Oh yeah, me and my girlfriend had an weekend." You can say it confidently without worrying about somebody saying, "Oh, y'all like that?" If you understand intimacy, your mind ain't even going to go there.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
when I was growing up, the women, we used to call each other, yeah, that my girlfriend. And it wasn't thought of in
Right.
any sexual kind of type of
Right.
relationship.
Absolutely.
Now, the brothers, they didn't say that was my boyfriend. They would say, yeah, that's my brother, my homie. But even then, men, my desire, actually, my goal was to reach the men.
Mm.
That the men actually was my target in the intimate place,
Okay. Okay.
because I wanted them to understand from a woman's perspective how we think. And it's not all inclusive that all women think exactly the way that I do, but
Right.
it's just a general guideline of how we women view intimacy. What do we think about intimacy? The non-sexual intimacy is cuddling, snuggling, holding hands, walk, things of that nature. And so I just want to bring people back to a conscious, intentional, purposeful state of don't be afraid to say, yeah, me and my boo had an intimate weekend, and not worry about people saying, oh, so y'all was doing the nasty. The more we embrace it, the more we will put to the side society's stigma that sex equals intimacy and intimacy equals sex when there are other forms of intimacy. And
and that's
so
the
quickly, yep.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And so quickly, Sassy, the Perfect Life, I call this my fun book. So Sassy was actually birthed when I was on tour for the Intimate Place. I broke my ankle in the worst way possible. And so I was stuck in Connecticut for almost 4 months because I couldn't travel due to the severity of the breakage. And so at the time, I was calling myself being in a relationship with somebody, and he didn't call to check on me. I
Oh wow.
hadn't heard nothing. All I heard was crickets. And I'm like, where's this dude? And I'm like, what? And so, they say the devil, your mind, don't let your mind be the devil's playground. And
Right.
so all these thoughts began to go through my mind as to why he wasn't reaching back out to me, calling to check on me. Um, and so I began to wonder, I said, you know what? I wonder if he got another family somewhere and he didn't tell me about it.
Mm.
And that was the foundation of Sassy. The foundation was Sassy, which is in the book, was Sassy married a guy and didn't know that he had a son by another woman. So he was dealing with another woman. She got pregnant. But at that time, he had met Sassy and they began to date. He never told Sassy about the child. So they was married 7 years. He just abruptly dies. And then all of a sudden, she gets a ring. Somebody rings her doorbell. She's served with papers for
Mm.
child support. And she's like, child support? She's like, who got a kid? Come to find, so she finds out, unfortunately, the hard way, that her deceased husband had a son that she didn't tell him about. And so the child's mother sued her for back child support through his estate. Sassy didn't want to have anything to do with it, so she gave them the entire estate. She was like, you can have it all. I don't want it. I'm starting my fresh anew. So she goes through several situations, that even this one where she had the decision to determine, do I just stop pursuing my dream? Because some of us are faced with situations in our life that has caused us to stop in our tracks. And so we have the decision, do I want to continue on, or do I just give up? But because Sassy was who she was, and Sassy is short for Sacagawea,
I love it. I love it.
she pursued. She was relentless. And because of her perseverance in everything that she went through, she ended up with the perfect life. And one of the things that I do share with people, please do not mistake Sassy. Don't compare Sassy to Cinderella, Snow White, and all these other fictitious fantasy books. Only because I talk about some real life situations that she went through that many people have gone through. And her ending is not a fairy tale story. If we see it through, we can end up at that place that we want it to be. And this was a lifelong, a childhood dream of hers, to have what I call the perfect life. And we know there's technically no absolute perfect life. So the alternative word to perfect life is ideal life. And in order for any of us to truly be able to get to it, is we got to go through even the tough times. And although right now it seems like you're not going to get there, honey, Sassy was just mustering up strength from everywhere she could, and she got through every situation, and she ended up with the perfect life, which was, she wanted to be married, she wanted to have children, but also she wanted to open up her own law firm as well. And she achieved those things. And so ultimately, Sassy the Perfect Life is to encourage those of you who are in pursuit of your dream, who's in pursuit of that ideal or that perfect life. Don't give up. It's going to take work, because it, as you read through the storyline, I do incorporate her age so that the readers can see how long her journey was. She
Mm.
had kind of a long journey to went to up to the point of when she finally got to where she wanted to be.
Now I want you to talk about now. Sassy, your Sassy book. That's a fiction book.
Yes, both.
And then the Intimate Place, is that a nonfiction book, or is that a fiction
It's
book as well?
fiction. Both books are technically fiction,
Okay.
but they are inspired by true or life events. And some of it is, I did incorporate some of my personal experiences only because I want my readers to connect with me, and I want to connect with my readers. I didn't write these books because I want to become rich or famous. I really wanted and still desire for my books to be great tools and resources for whatever people may be dealing with in their life.
Absolutely. Now, when you first began to write the Intimate Place, and you got that message from the pastor that was talking to you and telling you about the writing the books, and then you had your conversation with God. How was it that you were able to, or what got you able to start to put pieces together to develop what you were going to write about in that to develop that story, what was going to be in the story or be in the Intimate Place?
Because each book, I already had that foundation, which is key
Mm.
for anybody who is contemplating on writing whatever kind of book or even a magazine, any kind of article. It is key that you have a foundation, meaning what is the focal point of your purpose for writing that piece, or as is technically called, a manuscript. What is your reason for writing it? Which means that you have to have a foundation. So for the Intimate Place, it was, the foundation was because it, I don't want to say it discouraged me, but it bothered me more than anything to see the people of God struggle to be intimate with their God.
Mm.
That was my foundation. And because I knew what I wanted the people to learn from that one thought, that governed me writing the book. But it went from not just our relationship with Father God, but it carries over into our everyday relationships, such as if those who are either married, if you're in a relationship, if you're dating, it carries over to that, but then it also carries over into our personal lives and into your family and friendships as well. So it was just a connection of, let's not just stop at us struggling to be intimate with God,
Hmm.
but we struggle to be intimate even with spouses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we know that they say in the church realm, the divorce rate is higher. And I'm like, that is crazy. I said, that's crazy. How in the world can the church have a higher divorce rate when we are supposed to be the faith walkers?
Hmm.
And then from that, I said, okay, but what about having those intimate moments with ourselves? We neglect ourselves so much because we're focused on taking care of everybody. We
Hmm.
oftentimes neglect ourselves. And so again, so I just expanded it, going from our relationship with Father God to our mate, to ourselves, and then even with family and friends. So it wasn't hard for me to connect because I'm a thinker like that.
Hmm.
I've been told at times I overthink, and that is true. I mean, it's a flaw, it's a flaw, but it wasn't hard. And the same with Sassy, because I had that one thought of, Why didn't I hear from a guy who claimed he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, but yet you don't check on me during my downtime? I
Right.
just got hurt, you know, don't text me, don't call me, nothing. And then when you do, you give me some bogus excuse. And so from that, again, I just built from as a little girl. And I think I just recently discovered, I think my perfectionism comes from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he was a perfectionist per se, but he did like things in order.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't
Mm-hmm.
like things out of place. He really didn't care for clutter. He liked things in order. And I think that's where I got that perfectionism from, that having things in order. And so I just kind of took it to like the 10th power, unfortunately. And so I am a perfectionist. Even before the show, I'm sitting here trying to do my hair and I'm like, it's not looking right. So I'm like, oh, Leroy's going to kill me if I'm late. And I'm like, okay, my hair got to be, sometimes I do overdo it. But in that, Sassy represents me as a little girl. I was a tomboy at heart as a little girl, but I was also academically sound. I did make the honor roll. I wasn't valedictorian, but I did make the honor roll on a number of occasions. I was also very athletic. So her early years were based on my early years. And
Ah,
so, again, I implemented some of my personal life because I wanted to connect with my readers to say, I can identify with that. Yep, that was me, or that's even still me. Many men find it so surprising that I have three football teams, three NFL teams, because
how
I
you gonna
love
have three? How
football.
you gonna have three football teams? You can't have three. No,
Because
that
I
don't.
I I love football just that much, and my dream was to have a women's football team, a professional women's football team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I picked up the Chicago Bears. I was about 7 or 8 years old. I picked up the Chicago Bears because at the time we had Walter Payton,
Yeah.
we had the
Yeah.
refrigerator, we have had a number of players on the Chicago Bears team, and they were fierce.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I picked up the New York Giants in high school because of LT, because of Strahan, because of a number of players, Stephen Baker. I mean, it was a number of players. I
Mm-hmm.
picked up the New England Patriots also in high school or shortly after because Bill Parcells then took over the New England Patriots and he
Mm-hmm.
took some of my favorite players with him. So I
Yeah.
actually was following the players. And I liked what I saw even after those players had retired. The Patriots still was holding their own, so I kept them.
All right. Well,
So there
yeah.
won't be a fourth team.
I,
I maxed out.
I'll take the Giants and the Bears because I love Walter Payton too. He's one of my all time favorite athletes. Just athletes, that alone, all time favorite football players. But I'm still them Patriots. I've never liked the Patriots. Never liked the Patriots. But, can't
Hater,
stand them. Couldn't
hater,
stand. And couldn't stand
alligator.
them. Couldn't stand them. Even with Tom Brady gone to the Bucks, and I want them to lose today, just because of him, just because he on their team, I want them to lose today.
Oh my gosh,
and that,
you are such a hater,
yep,
Leroy. Don't be
and I'll admit it.
hating.
I will definitely admit it. I am sure enough a hater when it comes to them. The Steelers and the Patriots and the Redskins. Those are the three teams. You got three favorite teams. I have the three teams that I dislike the most, and it's those
I love
three.
it. I love it.
It's those three. Now, you talked about the character in Sassy. I want you to talk a little bit about the intimate place, and you said you used your life experiences in some of both of the books. So can you talk a little bit about those experiences, or even the character that you have in the intimate place, and how you were able to use that in that particular book?
So in the intimate place, well, there aren't characters like it is in Sassy because the intimate place is dealing with the individual themselves. So for
Mm-hmm.
every person, when you start reading the intimate place, it's all about you. There aren't any other characters. It's all about you. Where do
Mm-hmm.
you stand with in intimacy with God? for those of you who believe in God, because I know everybody don't believe in God. So let me just quickly put in this disclaimer, if you will. The Intimate Place is not a religious book. Although it starts out with God, because he is the originator of everything. He created everything, including intimacy. He created it with a purpose. It's not a religious book. It's just that because I am a minister, I could not start the book off when my whole thought process started with the fact that church people or believers, churchgoers were struggling to have this intimate relationship with him. So I couldn't start the book off without talking about the very thing that gave life to the book. And so again, it's not a religious book. Intimacy is about everybody, believer, non-believer, Christian, non-Christian. It's also not a woman's book. Again, the book was written for the purpose because I wanted to appeal to men, and Lord knows did I. I had just as many men purchase my book than I did women, which is what I was looking for. And I did get feedback from some of the men who said, wow, Nodella, you really hit the nail on the head in the Intimate Place. And I just felt so good. I said, okay, Lord, I said, I've accomplished my goal. And so, like I said, the Intimate Place really is all about the reader. Whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, it's all about the reader. It's all about getting you to identify where are you lacking in the different types of intimacies that I've identified in the book, which again is spiritual intimacy, mental intimacy. And I go in that order specifically because many things start in the mind process. Many things start in the mind process. So I start with the mental. So I go from spiritual because again, it is God who created intimacy. And for those of us who are spiritual, when you have that spiritual foundation, it will definitely help you with the other types of intimacy. And again, also, so we go from spiritual to mental. Once we move from mental, we develop emotions about the thought. We determine whether I like this or whether I don't like it, whether I like him or whether I don't like her. Once we go from that mental to the emotional, then we go into that verbal, because once you develop emotions, we then have this desire to be expressive about what we thought and what we are feeling. And so we start this verbal. And then once you move, so it's spiritual, mental, emotional, verbal. And then once we go from the verbal, we go into what I call is the non-sexual physical. And again, people, like when you're at church, one of the main things they do is go hug your neighbor. And so that's another form of intimacy, again, without bringing in that sexual piece. But like I said, also, some people like to hold hands, some people like to snuggle or cuddle, things of that nature. So they all are connected. But one of the things that I remind people is that if any of those are lacking, it has the ability to pull on the others. And so my goal also not to only bring us back into a conscious state, but bring us back into a conscious state of also identifying, are my intimacies, are they healthy? And we know there's always room for improvement in anything and everything that we do. And so I want people also to examine. So at the in chapter 1, before you move on to chapter 2, and I strategically put the questions at this point because I didn't want my readers to just rush through the book. So I put in about 5 or wrong book. I put in about 5 or 6 questions regarding, so 1, 2, 3. So I have 4 questions that I asked the reader before they can move on to chapter 2. And every person who, or well, not every person, but I've had a few people to, especially one of my girly friends, she was like, why you put them dang questions in there? Most everybody said they could not move on to chapter 2. They got caught up in chapter 1. I said, then it served its purpose. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. So the characters in Sassy, The Perfect Life, Sassy herself, she's very rambunctious. She is sassy. Also, she can be a little sassy. And that was me. I had a mouth on me as a kid, unfortunately. Always had a comment, always had a comeback on something. I would not let anybody get the last word. I always had to have the last word. So she had 2 best friends. One, his name was Elanis, aka Lonnie, and the other, other best friend was Tabitha, aka Tay. They were three peas in a pod, very smart, very supportive of each other. And I did have a couple of best friends growing up in school. And you know, we're still good friends even today. You know, and that's what friendship is about. So I show her childhood because oftentimes our childhood does play a role in us becoming an adult. It has a very strategic role in us becoming an adult. And so Sassy's first husband, you know, he was a piece of work, but he portrayed himself as this perfect gentleman. But Sassy, because she was kind of sheltered, she was an only child. That I am not. I have seven other siblings. So, but again, you know, she had the ex-husband who appeared to be what she thought would be the perfect husband, and he ended up not being. So he got killed off, if you will, in the story. She deals with a stalking situation. Then she meets finally, if you will, the perfect husband. But even with that, they had some challenges with that. I tell anybody and everybody, when you read Sassy, The Perfect Life, have your tissue box nearby, because I tap into nearly every emotion, if not every emotion possible. One minute you're going to be laughing. The next minute you're going to be crying. The next minute you're going to be scratching your head. Would I have dealt with that situation the way that she did? You know, so I really dug deep in Sassy. I really dug deep in Sassy to really captivate and to get the my readers' attention in that. And I believe that I successfully have kept their attention, or will keep your attention throughout the entire book, because you will not know what's coming next unless you cheat and look ahead. Other than that, so my former manager, she was reading the book and she was like, oh, I like it. 2 weeks later, she was like, Nodella, her husband died. I did not see that coming. She was like, I didn't see that coming.
You giving the story away. You can't give the story away.
No, that's just all. That's the only thing. But don't forget, I already mentioned that. That's why I'm only mentioning it again, because I did share that. Right. So no, I'm not gonna. Oh, trust me, there's a lot more to be read. But so, and that was my goal, was to keep the reader perhaps even on the edge of their seat.
Now, what's the message that you want the reader to come away with from the intimate place after they've read that book, and they've read that last word, that last chapter? What is it that you want them to come away from that book, and even the book, the Sassy book? What's the messages that you want them to come away with?
What I want them to come away with from the intimate place is to become more confident in your ability to have healthy relationships that most definitely includes intimacy. And again, we're not talking about sexual intimacy. Right. We're talking about all the other types of intimacy that often goes unnoticed, unmanaged, or unmonitored. The other thing that I want them to take away with is, how healthy are my intimacies? Again, you have 6 types of intimacies to consider. Are my levels of intimacy healthy? And when we look at our various relationships, that can be the answer to, or perhaps part of the answer as to why maybe some of your relationships aren't healthy. Because unfortunately, when I look at some people's relationships, celebrity status and non-celebrity status, some of these relationships are so toxic. I'm like, call hazmat.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if they just would take the time, many don't even understand what does it mean to have healthy, intimate relations, because society has taught us purposely that this is what intimacy is. The last takeaway, I want people to get back to using the word intimate. And so when I talk to people now and they start talking to me, I intentionally use the word. I say, yeah, we're having an intimate moment right now, because I want to break the cycle, if you will, of us being afraid of saying, yes, we're having an intimate moment, and ain't nobody thinking nothing about sex. And it doesn't matter whether it's a man and a woman, whether 2 men or 2 women. I want to break that cycle of us being so afraid of using the word intimate or intimacy in any conversation that we're having. And
Yeah.
lastly, with Sassy, go ahead. Did you
No,
have a
go ahead.
question?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And lastly, with Sassy, I just want people to understand that anything we pursue in life, that we are always going to be met with obstacles, but we have to be determined within ourselves, whether you have a cheerleading squad or not. We have to determine within ourselves, is it worth me dealing with all the things that I have to deal with? And so in my personal life, I've dealt with a lot of things, and there was plenty opportunity for me to say, you know what, I give up. I'm done with this. Even when I broke my ankle during the book tour for the Intimate Place, I could have said, you know what, I'm done. But when I got back home, God would not allow me to even have a pity party. He gave me 2 weeks to have a pity party when I was in Connecticut. And he said, okay, that's enough. Let's move on.
Wow, you got 2 weeks. He only gives me 24 hours.
You know,
It's say you boo hoo all you want those 24 hours. Next day, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, let's go. It's time
it,
to
it,
it's time to work.
exactly. And so that was a critical time for me, where I could have still ignored God's instruction, said, you know what, nope, I'm
Absolutely.
not doing this. And
Yep.
at that point, even at the birthing of Sassy, Sassy could have also died. At the same time it was birthed, it could have died because of what I was dealing with. But I
Yep.
came back to be more, and I was like, okay, I got to do this, because this is what one of the things that I was created to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I'm gonna ask you this: what does the term the intimate place mean to you? When I say that to you, what does that mean to you?
It's my place. It's a place where I go to have enjoyment. It's a place where I go for my peace. It's a place where I can go that I know I can find fulfillment. I can find joy, whether it's with spending it with someone or by myself. It's my place that I've created. So in church terminology, it's my secret place.
Mm, mm, mm. I like that. I like that. Now that's for you, and I love that. Now, um, I want you to give at least one way that someone can get to their intimate place and understand God, understand their man or their woman, and then understand themselves. How do they begin to get to that place?
By acknowledgement of saying, I'm not satisfied with
Mm,
my life, with the type of intimacy I have now. Many of us experience moments of intimacy, but the
mm,
intimate place is meant to help us to create a life of intimacy,
mm,
meaning that at any time you decide to want to have a time of intimacy, you can do it. It's
yes.
not, again, predicated on anybody except you. So
Mm,
the first thing is acknowledgement. Am I satisfied with my time of intimacy, or with my life of intimacy? Whether it's the spiritual, whether it's the mental, emotional, verbal, non-sexual, physical, and the sexual physical. Let's
mm,
just quickly tap on that. A lot of people, even when they know their sexual intimate life is not pleasing them, they won't say nothing about it. They'll just
right,
be like,
right,
it is what it is. And they just, no,
right, right,
no,
right.
no, you don't just accept it. And I believe many people are unsatisfied, but you got to acknowledge, you know what? No, I'm not happy with my spiritual intimacy. I'm not happy with my emotional or my mental or any form of intimate. That acknowledgement comes into play.
Wow.
That's first and foremost.
Wow. And I tell you, you talk about, and I love the way that you're using the term intimate, because people do try to confine it to a particular meaning, like you said, in a sexual content text. And I'll give you a perfect example of what you're talking about. Yesterday, I was a part of an event, went to, it's called, it was an event, but it was called Black Love. And it was called,
Yes, I saw that.
yeah,
Yes.
but the speaker, he touched, I mean, I can't even begin to explain to you. One, he touched me, but he also, everybody that was a part of it, we all came away from that, because a couple of us have responded to it. I mean, when we were thanking him for what he did, we were like, wow, you took us to this place that we were all connected on. And it had, like you said, it had nothing. That would be that spiritual, intimate place, because we all were in one place at one time, and we experienced the same thing, almost like the upper room. To me, that upper room
Yes.
experience, that's that
Yes.
intimate place that
Yes.
you can't, that you can't tap into, and it has nothing to do with any other aspect of your life but becoming closer and doing that dealing with that aspect of your life. So I totally get what you're saying, but a lot of people, they go directly to, to that, the physical intimacy. And that's what the speaker was talking about yesterday. He made us see Black love in a way that I was just like, oh man, I gotta go back and sit and think about this for a
Yes.
minute. Here I am thinking about it in a certain way, and he took us to a whole nother level with it, just like you're talking about, and you're taking people to a whole nother level with thinking about intimacy and the
Yes.
intimate place, and being able to get there from those different perspectives, like you talked about. Because we don't think about it intimate. We don't think about it, it being intimate with God.
Yes.
Hey, that should be your daily thing. That intimate
Yes.
time that you spend with Him. That spiritual time that you spend with Him, and talking to Him, having a conversation with Him.
Hmm.
That becomes that. And even like today, I was watching a YouTube. Her name is Dr. Karen Hunter. She has this weekly YouTube class. It's called In Class with Dr. Carr, who is her, let's say, co-host. But she has this show, and he's on there. But he's the African American history teacher or director of African American history at Howard. But they have these conversations, and they were talking about Hank Aaron, they were talking about Hank Aaron, but the conversation expanded beyond, Hank Aaron and everything like that. But just listening to their dialogue was, like you said, it was that, just that verbal intimacy that you just like, wow, you're listening to these people have this conversation and you're getting so much from it. Or even a
Yes.
conversation that you may have with someone. And just like, you know what? Man, that conversation was really good. We really had
Yes.
a intimate conversation. And like you said, it has nothing to do with any kind of sexual innuendo or anything about it. It's
Yes.
two people connecting on a deeper level than anything else. So I love that you talked about that, and you're trying to get people to that place. And I want you to, and we'll end with these last couple of things. What advice would you give to a writer that says that they're trying to get to the place where you are as far as writing and being able to take people on that journey that you take people
I'll say this, and some people may not agree, but I'm going to say this.
on?
If your sole purpose for becoming an author is to become famous and rich, then don't even start.
Mm-hmm.
Because the material you put out, people are not going to connect with. They're going to be like, this is trash. I want my money back. I write, and I do have a part 2 Sassy coming out, and I'm doing also a second edition of the intimate place as well. My goal is to get them both done this year. Um, but my goal for writing, besides God mandating me, is because I want to help better people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have something to say to better their lives, then I want to share it. Because I am a writer, I'm a talker, I found myself lately being a better writer than talker. I seem to find myself being able to write my thoughts more clearly as opposed to speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I write, I'm often thinking about what would my reader say to this part of my book? What would that reader say to this part of my book? So as I was writing The Intimate Place, as I was writing Sassy, I kept potential readers in mind. Would they find this interesting? Would they be able to gain something from what I wrote? Whether it's a whole paragraph, whether it's just a few words, or even a particular whole chapter. What will my readers take away from this? When you are writing, always keep your potential readers in mind. And I'm not talking about your family and friends. I'm not talking about your coworkers. I'm talking about people who you don't know, who may read your book, and you may never know that they read your book,
Mm-hmm.
and you may never meet them. Keep those people in mind when you're writing.
Wow, I love that. I love that. So what's next for you? What you got? What you got going on? I know you said you have the books,
What
but
don't I have going on? So, I launched a t-shirt clothing line last year, t-shirt/clothing line last
yes.
year. It's called Sassy and Swag Collection. Sassy is for the women and swag is for the men. That also was something that was actually was a spinoff from Sassy the Perfect Life. So after I wrote Sassy the Perfect Life, I said, God, what do you want me to do with this book? He said, create a t-shirt line. I
Mm-hmm.
said, God, do you realize how many t-shirt businesses are out there? He said, create a t-shirt line. I said, okay, so what are we going to call it? And he reminded me of the song, I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt. But he said, instead of saying too sexy for my shirt, I'm too sassy for my shirt. And I said, okay, God, now I am an equal opportunist. I said, I can't have a t-shirt line just for women. I said, we got to have something for the men too. And so it took me a couple of months, and I said, well, what am I going to do for the men? I said, we got Sassy down, and Sassy came from the book again. And I thought about Sassy's husband, not the first one, but her final husband. And I thought about his character in the book. And I said, okay, without giving away any more about who her final husband was. And I said, what is the buzzword for men today? Or I know some women use it, but I attribute it more so to men, is swag.
Right, absolutely.
And so I came up with the name Sassy and Swag. And collections represent, so Sassy and Swag, ultimately, it seems like what I did unintentionally is I created a brand that's really tailored for couples, because there is a dedicated his and her collection where, because I do see couples who like to dress alike. So I created a lot of designs for his and her. So my first design, it's over there. So my first design was King of Swagville. And the matching to that is Queen of Sassyville.
I love it. I love
and
it.
so when you go to my website, which is www.sassyswagcollections.clothing, and you click on the his and her tab, you'll see a lot of different designs, again, that allows couples, whether you're dating, whether you're in a relationship, because from my understanding, dating and in a relationship is two different things, but that's a whole nother segment. If you're engaged, if you're married, it allows you to dress alike. So another design I have, King on deck. I have another one, Queen on deck. So again, there's a lot of his and her stuff that came from Sassy. Now I have a talk show that's called The Intimate Place, or it's called Intimate Talk Show, which was inspired by The Intimate Place. And again, that was something God had told me to do, to create the talk show. And I just have created another spinoff called Intimate Talk Book Talk. It's a little different from what you do, is that you have a showcase. My desire through my second talk show, Intimate Talk Book Talk, our motto is intimate conversations through books. And basically, I would have someone like yourself come on. We'll talk about that particular book that evening. And then I would have you to read from that book. And as you're reading from that book, I want you to walk me through what is it that you was thinking when you wrote it. And it's along the line of what we're doing now. And I was hoping to just kind of streamline it and just focus on the book and just have an intimate dialogue around that person's book. What else? So I got the talk shows. So I have 2 talk shows. I have the clothing line. I mean, I have some other things in the works. The Lord just keeps me busy. He just keeps me busy. And I'm just so grateful for this time and space, Leroy. I greatly appreciate it. And I truly enjoyed myself talking with you officially, about my book. And I just want to say you're doing a great work, providing a space for authors to also be showcased. And I hope that we are, which I'm sure we'll be able to do some collaboration in the future. And that's something that I'm looking forward to. So.
No, absolutely, yeah. And along those lines, yeah, we definitely we'll put our brains together, because I have an idea that something that we can do along these lines and everything like that. I want you to give your, I guess, your website, or where people can purchase the book along with the other products and services. I know you mentioned the other products for the t-shirts and everything, but I don't know if those are the same places. But if they, and also for people that want you to come and speak too, because I know you're an evangelist as well, so you do speak in engagements too.
Yes, and I was just getting ready to say, so I'm also a public speaker, not just for ministry. Again, I retired at the age of 46. Believe it or not, I was able to retire at age 46. And so it was also prophesied to me that I would be an enterprise. And that's something that you and I had worked on last year in helping me to become an enterprise. And that basically just entails everything that God has me to do. It's all tied to me. But because I worked so long in the administrative industry or in field, I've been asked to also do workshops, music workshops. No, I don't have a degree in music. You don't need a degree in music when God has anointed you to be able to teach people what it is that He desires from us when we are in our time of worship with Him. I do public speaking for teaching administrative assistants, church administrators. I have almost 35 years as being in that field, and I currently still work in that field. Even though I retired, I now work as a contractor in that field. And again, I am an evangelist. I am transitioning to becoming a pastor, but because of COVID, we put that on hold until we're able to publicly do the service for me to become a pastor. So the websites, again, to purchase my books, you can go to www.n as in Nodella, S as in Sacagawea, J as in Jordan Ministries, and that's ministries.com. For my clothing line, it's www.sassyswagcollections.clothing. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. If you Google me, my name will come up on Google. So I'm not a hard person to find. So feel free, if you want to connect with me, send me a friend request. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, and if I missed anything, because I do a lot of things. And I'm enjoying my life right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, but when you Google, I dare y'all to try and spell Sacagawea. I dare you.
So just quickly, the reason why I have the name Sacagawea is because I do have Native American in my blood. So my father was true to his Native American roots. He wanted to give us all Native American
Oh,
names.
wow.
And my mother said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So they settled on for my middle name, Sacagawea. For those of y'all who don't remember or don't even know who Sacagawea is, she was the one who was part of the Lewis and Clark expedition way back in the 1800s.
Absolutely.
They also made a gold coin of her and her son Jean Baptiste. So she made an impact. And when I look over her life, I do see some similarities. And I kind of understand why her name does fit me personally. So that's kind of how I got the middle name. My father was trying to stick to his Native American roots. And so that was as close as my mother would allow him to get.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That is awesome. And like you said, what a great name to carry though too, because she was instrumental in that. I forgot what the agreement was. What you said, like with Lewis and Clark and everything like that. But that's awesome. I knew it had to be a story behind that and everything like that. So that's cool.
Definitely.
That's cool.
And I love my middle name. And so it wasn't part of my profile. I decided to add it last year.
Okay.
Partly just to set me apart from other people. Sacagawea, mine is spelled with, you can spell it either with a J or with a G. In the Native American community, they spell it totally different. So my spelling is actually the English version of the way her name is originally spelled. So
Absolutely. Evangelist, thank you so much. I always enjoy our conversations that we have. This is that intimate place that you can get with having those conversations with friends and all of those things that you enjoy, because you know that you're going to come away, like I said, come away with, wow, that was a great conveation that I had with this. But I like talking to this person or that person.
Exactly. You walk away with a sense of fulfillment. you walk away with a sense of even confidence. And although, you know, in my own right, I'm a smart person, I'm a confident person, but when I talk to people like you know, I'm like, wow, you know, I'm like, he added
Absolutely.
to me, you know, she
Absolutely.
added to me. And again, that's what intimacy about is about also, is adding to the person. As they say, the buzzword now today is adding value to that person. And let me
Yes.
tell you, if you are struggling and you're having a life of intimacy with any of them, I encourage you to get a copy of my book, and you can also reach out to me and say, what did you mean by this in your book? If you get a copy of Sassy, again, you can reach out to me and say, what did you mean by this in your book? And I will be more than happy to, you know, talk with you more in depth about both books.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's The Intimate Place and Sassy by
Yes.
Evangelist Nodella
Yes.
Sacagawea
Yes.
Jordan. You can pick those up. I want to thank you again for joining us on the Author Showcase. It's been wonderful. I told y'all this was going to be a great conversation, one that uplift you and get you. Hopefully, it taught you something, it equipped you with something, and then it has impacted you to want to do something. Even if it's to strengthen your relationship with God, or strengthen your relationship with yourself, or strengthen your relationship with
The
your friends,
significant other.
family, or your
Yes.
significant other. That's what
Hmm.
it's all about. So we want to
Yes.
thank y'all for joining us.
Yes.
We
Thank
say
you.
y'all tune in next time. And as I always say, my mantra for 2021 is leave the familiar and elevate your influence. And what better way to elevate your influence than by having a book that's going to add to you and add to the relationships that you build, add to the relationship that you have with God, add to the relationship that you have with yourself, which is a
Yes.
huge one too, and then add to your relationships you have with others. So it's your
Yes.
boy, Leroy McKenzie Jr., and we'll talk to you all soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.